Hello and welcome to week 4 of Controlling Your Temper. I'm Carol Richards and this is Kerry Ross.
In today's session, we aim to help you to start making links between your anger and how you behave. We will be encouraging you to recognise what you do when you're angry and limit the behaviours which make your anger worse. We will be encouraging alternative ways of behaving when you feel angry. We introduced you to Neil and Nikki in previous sessions. Now let's take a look at their behaviours in more detail using the ABC model. Nikki became really angry with her kids for leaving the lid off the toothpaste. She thinks, "Here we go again. No one in this house ever listens to me. I've told them 1,000,000 times. They have no respect for me." Nikki then shouts at the children and she doesn't speak to them on the way to school. As a consequence of her behaviour, she feels guilty. She dwells on the fact that she is behaving like her parents used to. She also makes more mistakes at work that day. When Neil arrives late for the job skills training, the course leader criticises him. Neil thinks, "Those idiots, they can't tell a genuine person. I'm not like all those other time wasters. It's not my fault I've lost my job. I would have been on time if that useless bus driver had turned up on time." Neil storms off and doesn't explain why he is late. Later, as a consequence of his behaviour, Neil feels guilty and goes to the pub. Now, take a couple of moments to write down in your own ABC model examples of your own angry behaviour. Ask yourself, what did I do the last time I got angry? Was this behaviour helpful? And if not, why not? What were the consequences of your behaviour? How would you have preferred to behave in that situation?
So let's now take a look at how Nikki and Neil could have behaved differently. 2 key behaviours for managing your anger are learning to let go and act assertively. Some examples of letting go for Nikki are to perhaps notice that she's angry but decide not to react in the moment. Using controlled breathing may help her in this situation. She could remind herself that shouting makes her feel bad afterwards. In other words, think about the consequences. She could tell herself it's okay to talk to the children about other things on the way to school, and that may reduce the feeling of guilt and provide a helpful distraction from her thoughts. Examples of acting assertively for Nikki might be to speak firmly but calmly to the children. Tell them how it makes her feel when they don't listen and the consequences of this. For example, Mum gets stressed when you don't listen and it takes longer to get out the door, which means we end up running late for school. Nikki needs to be persistent. Children often do not do something the first time of asking, so repeat yourself if necessary, but do this when you are calm. Nikki may find controlled breathing and distraction helpful at these times. Ways that Neil may try to let go are to notice he is angry but don't react. Controlled breathing can help at this stage. Tell himself it's not worth getting angry. In other words, think about the consequences. He could try to focus on something else, for example, counting to 10. Neil may also find acting assertively works in this situation. He could explain why he was late. He could let the course leader know politely but firmly that he is unhappy about being spoken to in this way. He could make a complaint. We will be focusing on assertive communication strategies in much more detail in session 5. Now, take a couple of moments to think about a recent situation when you were angry and your behaviour. Think about ways you could have tried letting go or acting assertively. Write these down and practice these behaviours over the next week. Another useful strategy you can use in anger situations is distraction. Often people tell us that after a situation where they have become angry, they really wish they just hadn't reacted as their anger made trouble for them or a bad situation worse. If that's the case for you, then learning to distract yourself from the thoughts and behaviours which are fueling your anger can be really helpful. You may already have noticed that with time, your anger naturally passes anyway, and you're glad you didn't say or do something you could have later regretted. You may use distraction as a way of getting your thoughts together, so when you do wish to respond, you actually say something helpful and don't just react impulsively. There are different ways to distract yourself. For example, learn to refocus. Purposefully move your attention to something else in your environment. It could be a picture in a waiting room, a person on a bus, or a view from a window. Really notice the details, including colours, shapes, and movement. Try counting. Mental exercises like counting can be helpful. Use what is in front of you, like the number of red cars on the road, or count backwards in threes from 100. Find a calm place. This can be real or imaginary, but should be a place that brings about a feeling of relaxation and calmness. It could be a place you went on holiday, or a picture of a place you saw in a magazine and would like to visit. Try to really imagine yourself there, alone in the moment. Conjure up what you would smell, taste, feel, see or hear. Try taking time out. Buy yourself a bit of time by walking away from the anger situation. You don't need to storm off. Leave calmly and tell the other person you will come back once you have calmed down. Whilst on time out, do something to distract yourself, like exercise, controlled breathing or distraction are all really good options. Our behaviour when we are angry can be strongly affected by the influence of alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs often increase arousal and adrenaline levels. This in turn can impact on our fight or flight response, which means we are much more likely to overreact to things when under the influence. Fight or flight is also switched on when we are hungover. It's been proven that alcohol and drugs adversely affect our judgment and decision making. We are much more likely to act on impulse, and often this can lead to more serious consequences. Try to avoid drinking as a way of reducing your anger. Instead, use the strategies we have introduced so far during this course. Make sure you drink sensibly. This means no more than 14 units per week for women and 21 for men. Aim to have at least 2 days of the week alcohol-free. So to sum up, in today's session we have looked at how we behave when we are angry, the behaviours that keep anger going and the consequences of our behaviour, how we can act differently and learning to let go or act assertively, the impact of alcohol and drugs. We hope you have found this session helpful. Please join us for session 5, where we will be looking at learning how to be more assertive.